This is Sporecast,
where we talk about mold, health, and the spaces that we live in.
Where personal experience meets real conversation.
Where we ask better questions about what's making people sick.
And where no one has to navigate it alone.
Thank you for listening to Sporecast. Before we get started, just a quick note. This podcast is for informational and personal experience purposes only. We are not medical professionals and nothing shared here should be taken as medical advice. We all come from different backgrounds and perspectives, so the opinions shared are our own and may not reflect each other or apply to every situation. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified professional when needed. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hi, Baylie.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
I am so good. So good today.
This is so exciting.
Yeah.
I'm so
We're
excited.
Back for another Sporecast, my first one with Baylie. I'm very excited.
Yay. I'm also really excited for this subject too. It's something that I've been researching for a while, and you don't really know what I'm talking about. So I'm excited for that. So I wanted to ask you, what did you think or know about mold before your journey began?
Oh, wow. Okay. I did not. Okay. So before I found out that I was sick from mold, I had heard a few people talk about mold. Like I think I had heard Dave Asprey has talked about it, I think, and maybe a couple of other bigger, like higher profile type of people. And but I never really thought that my house had mold because we didn't see it anywhere. And anytime I had encountered mold, I just thought that you were supposed to put bleach on it to kill it. Like I totally thought that. So like
And
if
now
I
we know that's like the worst thing.
Yes. So like if I ever saw any small, like I would say that there's been times where I've seen like small amounts of it here and there. Like maybe in the shower or whatever, but not really like ever a huge issue for us. So there was that. And but I had really no concept of like mold growing in places that you couldn't see it. I had no idea. I had never heard really anything about mycotoxins, so I was completely clueless about that. Um, had no idea it could make you that sick. And I also had no idea about molds being in foods. That's another thing that I had zero clue about.
Oh, yeah.
I had heard maybe a couple of things about it being in coffee, but I thought that that was like a specific, I thought that it was more about it being mishandled and not about it just coming with mold in it. And I didn't know that other foods had that as well. So I guess that's like the quick version of where I was at with it.
So for me, and I'm like still putting the pieces together as I go, because you know how it is. You kind of like connect the dots later, or like something will just randomly hit you. You're like, oh, wait. And I remembered the other day that when I was in my early 20s, I had moved back home with my parents for a little bit, and they had a leak in their laundry washer, and that backed up to my closet, and they didn't take care of it. And so my closet started literally growing mushrooms in it. And
Whoa.
yeah, it was crazy. And I told somebody at that time, and they're like, "Oh, that can make you really sick. So you should, I don't know." So then I called the doctor and I talked about it with them, and they're like, "Well, there's not really anything we can do about it. You just like get out of the environment and you'll be fine." And then at some point in my adult life, me and my husband had a leak somewhere, but we were under the impression that mold takes a long time of consistent
Like damp.
moisture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a one-time problem wouldn't create mold, even if you don't dry it well. We just thought like it takes a long time of consistent water, and that is the only condition in which toxic mold can grow.
I would
So
agree with
that,
that too.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
our understanding. So we didn't necessarily dry out, you know, how we were supposed to. I remember hearing the public opinion of mold. It was like there was some hysteria surrounding news had come out and everyone was just like freaked out about black mold in the 90s. So I do remember hearing that. And I was kind of talking to my husband the other day, and we both kind of like had that memory. We're like, oh, yeah, I remember there was hysteria in the media about this. So then I was thinking, like, why did it disappear? So that brings me into this research that I've been doing to kind of like figure out what happened.
You're like, okay, now I need to know more.
Yeah,
It is
exactly.
really interesting. Well, I am curious because I have zero memory of that in the 90s. So, and I think we're about the same age. So that's interesting that you
Yeah.
heard about it and I don't remember that at all.
And I don't know if I remember it happening in the moment. I think I had just like read an article about it at some point or like heard about it, but I didn't clock it very much because I'm like, oh, that's never going to be an issue that I have to deal with.
Yeah.
And did
Yeah.
you think that way too? Like whenever you heard about black
Yeah.
mold, you're like, that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah, because in my mind, like the anybody that if I were to like go in a house that was obviously filthy and, had really bad black, like I had a vision in my mind of what a problematic black mold would look like. And to me it looked like, literal big patches of mold like growing up the walls. So in my mind, because that was not in my house, that was not an issue for us. So, and honestly, I don't know that I ever really thought much about why mold would grow that aggressively. I kind of thought that if it did, it was probably somebody that wasn't taking care of their property, of their home, which sometimes is true, but
Yeah.
also other times it's more than that. There's more than that to it. So that was kind of my vision is like, oh, if you've got that bad of a mold problem, you're doing something really wrong. Like you're not cleaning your house or whatever.
That was kind of what I thought too, is that you had to be like actively negligent constantly.
Right.
When me and my husband didn't properly clean up a leak that we had, it wasn't even that we were being actively negligent. We just thought it was like, oh, it dries.
Right.
And
Exactly. Yes.
both of us
Same
are
here.
in desert states. And I don't know about you, but like I was told that since we were in Utah, which is a desert state, that that type of toxic mold doesn't really grow here.
Yeah. I don't know that I was told that so much as just I've heard people say like, well, that's surprising, it's so dry there. How could mold grow or what, how could that even be possible? Well, unfortunately it is. And then once you know and you start looking around when you go in other buildings and you realize like not only is it possible, but it's in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do see a lot of mold in desert states, so I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know if there really is a perfect place to be where mold wouldn't grow.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I think if you've got the right conditions because it's not there's just so many things at play. It's the weather, it's the building materials, it's the way it was built, it's possible water damage from, leaks and there's just so many like there's so many different things, which I don't mean that to be, scaring anybody, but it's just, I guess, to say more so that it happens to all kinds of people in all different walks of life.
Right. Well,
Tell
so,
us about your research.
hey, I'm going to go into the research. So, in the early 90s in Cleveland, Ohio, several infants developed pulmonary hemorrhaging, which is bleeding in the lungs. Researchers investigated environmental causes, and many of the homes had significant water damage. And then what they found was a mold called Stachybotrys. That's, the original OG toxic mold.
That's what I have or had,
You
I should
did?
say. Yes.
That's,
Hmm.
yeah. I don't think I did. It didn't test for it, but I do also understand it is hard to test positive for that one because it doesn't really
Oh,
like
really?
to travel or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah. I
So,
had that and Aspergillus were the two main ones. Yeah.
yeah. So that was the mold that they found in these cases. So a paper comes out and it suggests a link between the infant sicknesses and this particular mold. But then later it was reviewed. The CDC determined that there were a lot of holes in the theory or the paper. They didn't have the right
Yeah.
criteria. So some of the criteria that was missing was the sample size was too small. There were confounding variables such as smoking, poverty, and other environmental factors. And actually, while we're on this, I kind of group, when I say mold, I think it just kind of goes in with, environmental factors in general,
Yeah.
because there's so many other environmental factors that can be at play too. So,
So do you mean maybe more like just air quality in general?
yeah, air quality in
Okay.
general.
Because then you're incorporating like, yeah, potentially cigarette smoke, which has, toxic chemicals and carcinogens in it. And then you might be talking about um like VOCs and all these different things. Even like just dust and pet dander and things like that can contribute to poor, or like I know we've talked about just on our own, rodents, like all of that can contribute to poor indoor air quality.
Right. Yeah. And so I don't know, maybe that was not the right way to frame it. Obviously, there is a distinction between mold and those things, but I just mean we should be not just concentrating on mold, but our environmental air quality in general.
Yeah, definitely. I
Because
think so.
I've heard of a lot of cases too where people think that, it is mold, but it ends up being just like a rat infestation. But it all seems to have the same symptoms.
It does. I think that we talk about mold and maybe we latch onto it a little bit just because there are so many, I don't know, like so many ways that I guess maybe because if you are living in a house and you've got like a really bad, like let's use the rat example, you kind of probably know that that's not healthy. Maybe I feel like most people know that. Whether or not they can do something about it is another story. But with the mold, I think it's different. I think we don't necessarily A, know how bad it is, and B, know how bad it can be without really knowing, if that makes sense. Like you could walk into a building that has mold in it and you might not really even know that it has mold in it. In fact, there's a good chance that you wouldn't know if it's somewhere that you can't see it.
Right. It is more insidious because, like you said, you can't always see it. I think that's,
So
yeah.
basically, so basically they did this small study and then they determined, well, that's not a great study because too small a sample size and it could have been blamed on other
Yeah,
factors.
the evidence was insufficient, but it didn't disprove it. It just said that the evidence wasn't sufficient.
Hmm.
So that study was basically withdrawn. And then when that study came out, people were panicking. Then once this counter argument came out, then it was labeled black mold hysteria. So then
Okay.
people are dismissing mold now. Then we have this news article that comes out in 2001 with Melinda Ballard in Texas. And she has a plumbing leak that led to extensive mold growth in her home. And basically, the home became uninhabitable. She had to discard all of her belongings. She filed a claim with her insurance, and the claim was denied. So then she takes out a lawsuit against them, and she was awarded 32 million in damages
To the insurance company or with the insurance company?
with the
Or
insurance
the
company. So the insurance company was to pay her 32 million.
wow.
And that was later reduced and settled for less. And I think it was like 12 million or something. Can you imagine that? A, can you imagine that? And then B, is that amount fair? Because how do you quantify your damages? You know what I mean? I mean, even us who are sort of on the other side, we're still dealing with it and possibly will deal with it. And then you also go into PTSD that comes with it.
Right. Well,
So,
and think about it, like, I like to think about it this way. What about the fact that, if you're ill, that affects your ability to it affects people's everything. It affects your livelihood. If you're sick, you're not as capable of maybe working as much or, you know, advancing your career. It might set you back with expensive medical bills. It might put you in a state where you have permanent damage, permanent injuries that you just have because of this. It could affect multiple family members, like children that are young. And so, what is the implications of the rest of their entire life because of this? We just don't even really know. So, I agree that, putting a number, putting a price tag on it I don't even know. I couldn't even begin to try to put a price tag on it.
yeah. And at first I thought that was ridiculous, like 32 million
It's
and the 12
crazy.
million. I thought that was crazy, like so ridiculous, and also not very sustainable, because it's such a big problem. If everyone's being paid this money, it's just not sustainable. Where is that money going to come from? But then on the other side, like you said, there's just, you can't really put a number on the damages. It's, you can't quantify the damage to your life.
Yeah. I think it would be different too. I mean, I think that if the insurance companies didn't I mean, I think if they were just paying out in the way that I personally feel like they should be paying out, they wouldn't necessarily need to pay out 12 million because you would be like the goal would be that you would be finding this stuff faster and fixing it faster before it becomes this massive problem, you know?
Okay, yeah, that actually really is a good point, because for me, we found out we had mold in this house that I moved into 2 years ago. We found out in 30 days, and we wouldn't have had to become as sick as we got, because if we would have just been able to
Yeah.
fix it all in the first place.
And not have this whole
Yeah.
runaround and this whole, yeah, situation that then drags on. And it's I also think that that tells me, of course, I'm not an expert. This is my 100% my opinion. But if the insurance company is willing to keep up that behavior of making it that difficult for claims to get approved. They're doing it because it's worth it to them. They're keeping more money. So they get slapped with a $12 million payout. But I think that if they're still doing this, then obviously that's worth it to them, because I think they're still profiting from running things the way they're running it.
Right. Right. And I
With
think part of us becoming as sick as we do is the stress that we have to go through of like trying to fight the insurance company or trying to figure out how you're going to pay for things or becoming relocated for a while and
right.
out of your home.
Well, it's really scary because, you kind of no nobody wants this. Nobody asked for any of this. Nobody wants to have this happen to them where they get sick from their home. And, so many of us, when we figure it out, it's like finally we have this answer after suffering for years, months, years, whatever it is. You figure this out, and then comes the next blow, which is finding out that, oh, by the way, your health insurance doesn't cover the testing for this. Oh, by the way, um, you may not even be able to see your regular doctor to help you with this. You might have to go to some specialized doctor and pay out of pocket for this. Oh, by the way, your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover mold. Like, you get all these blows, and then you're, in addition to already feeling bad. And I think that's where a lot of the hopelessness comes from for people, because they just end up feeling trapped. There's just not a lot of, nobody plans. Nobody has just, I mean, I shouldn't say nobody. I'm sure some people do, but the majority of people that I've talked to, nobody plans for this. We don't have money set aside for a six-figure remediation. We don't have money set aside to pay for all of these medical expenses that have to come out of pocket. And so then there you go. It's more piled on.
Yeah, that's just it. It piles on, and I think it contributes so much to how sick we really do become. If it was just normalized or mainstream, and we got the help that we needed, we got the money to fix our houses, I don't think we would all become as sick as we do become. And I think that's the other thing is like, I'm nearly to the other side. I'm still dealing with it here and there, and possibly always will be, but I'm nowhere near the nightmare that I was in 1 to 2 years ago. But even now, I can't really just let it go. And it seems like people in my life, it feels like they wonder why we haven't moved on. And it's like, it shook our entire lives. It wasn't just that we got sick and then we got better because we were helped. It was this whole thing where people were, gaslighting us, doctors. No one would help us and no one understood. And we were alone and dark. And then we had to search for answers ourselves. And so, how could you just move on so quickly,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, I don't know if you feel like this, but I 100% feel like this, just based on so many of the friends that I've made through all of this. I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones, to be honest. I feel like, there are things that I still now am dealing with. Like you said, I've recovered so much, and I want to share that with people. I want to share that so that other people do have hope. But also, you know, I'm still healing. I still have lots of issues, like you said, and it totally changes everything. It changes, when you want to move to a new house, it changes everything about that process. When you're now have that in your head, that you have to think about mold and how is this building built and water damage and all these things. It changes everything. I know we've talked about having rain anxiety, which probably sounds really stupid to a lot of people. But you get actually scared. And then I find myself in the summer when we get these crazy downpours and I'm in an older house and I literally lay in bed and I think about water seeping into my house and, am I going to know? So it definitely like there is a mental component there. Truly there is. But I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones. And so that's why for me, it feels like I have I don't know if I guess responsibility almost, or a calling, maybe a calling is a better way of saying it, that I feel like I need to talk about this stuff and not just sweep it under the rug, because I know that there's so many more people out there suffering and they don't know why. And there's people that do know why and they can't get the help that they need because the resources aren't there. So that's why I've created, I guess, the platform that I have with my personal, like, posting online and even just like wanting to be involved in this podcast, et cetera, and have these conversations.
Right. Yeah, that's how I felt as well. And one thing for me is I know that so many people have internal symptoms. And I did have internal symptoms, but I had so many external symptoms that I could show people and I could be like, look, this is what I looked like. This is what I looked like after I moved in. And then this is what I looked like when I healed. So you
Yes,
can literally see it. And I thought that that would be a powerful tool to be able to show people how my symptoms manifested, which, like I said, unfortunately, some people don't get those physical manifestations that other people can see. Um, but I thought that that would be helpful in the conversation and like helpful to have proof.
it
So,
is. And if you end up listening to this podcast and you need to go to Bailey's TikTok, you need to look her up, the Mold Mom, right? I'm right. That's your handle.
yeah,
And you need to like scroll through because she's posted a bunch of times these photos of when you had like that. I mean, your lips and your face, it's really, really undeniable when you look at it that something was very, very wrong. And so I think you're right. Like it's an incredible story and it's like you can't ignore something like that. And I feel that way about, even though my ear pain was not an outward symptom, I feel like I'm actually weirdly grateful that I had that symptom, because that was the symptom for me that took this entire thing and was like, no, something's wrong. You will not tell me that something's not wrong. And it kind of like gave me the courage to even though it still took me a while to figure out what it was, like it was the thing where I was like, no, 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 something's really wrong with me at this point, because I can't just make an excuse for, oh, it's seasonal allergies, or, oh, the air is just dry. That's why you get nosebleeds, or all of these other things. You just have dry skin. That's why your legs are covered in rashes. So,
right. And
yeah.
then, yeah, the mental component. Oh, you're just whatever,
You're just
stressed,
tired. Yeah, you're just
tired, your
stressed. You're just
mom.
tired.
Those
It's
are
normal.
those are easy to deny, even though they're very real. They're easier to deny. But yeah, when you have like those physical symptoms, it makes you keep going and trying to figure it out because you're like, I'm not making up that my ear is in
Has
pain
a
or
like a
yeah,
yeah, no. And
that's
it's
not just
also
because I'm
like
stressed.
right. And it's hard too with some of those other symptoms, which are very real symptoms, like brain fog and fatigue are very, very, and anxiety and depression. Like all of those are very real, but they're kind of these like, they're not specific, right? So if you've never had, like, how do you know if your level of tiredness is worse than somebody else's? Like, how do you really
Right.
actually know that? You don't. And most of the time, at least in my situation, it wasn't like a flipping a switch. It wasn't like all of a sudden one day I had energy and the next day I had none. That's not how it played out. Like it was a slow kind of, my baseline got worse and worse and worse. And
Yeah.
so you don't even really know anymore. You forget what it feels like to even feel normal.
Yeah, that's exactly true. You forget what your baseline is. I think it's easy to blame yourself too, or just think it's in your head, or yeah, like you said, normal. And for
Yeah.
you, didn't they blame it on being a mother,
Yes, like,
basically?
"Oh, you're just stressed. Oh, you're just stressed because you're a mom of 3 little kids. That's totally normal. It's totally normal to feel that way." And, it was not normal. Like, I don't know if I should go into some of the specifics. I feel like there needs to be, like, a trigger warning. But so maybe we'll save that for another, time. But, yeah, there were things that were very much not normal.
Yeah.
And I was just being told that, yes, it was a normal part of being a mom was being exhausted. And honestly, a lot of times too, what you said about blaming yourself, a lot of times I just thought I was lazy. Like I thought I was a lazy person. I thought I just lost like all my motivation over time. And so I would do these things where I would try to really like just dig up all the willpower I could to like white knuckle through, getting up and doing all of this stuff. And I would burn out so badly from it. And I just could not understand. I was like, okay, well, I don't know, I guess I'm just, but then the funny thing is, I get out of mold, a few months goes by, and lo and behold, I am not lazy when I feel good. When I feel
Right.
good, I get out of bed and I am like ready to hit the ground running and I want to do all the things. So
Right.
it was mold.
Yeah. And so even though my symptoms were so easily verifiable. How I looked before, and then right after moving in, my whole body starts reacting. I had head to toe hives. Even then, doctors were telling me, "Oh, mold can't do that to you." So I all of a sudden, developed an allergy or whatever. I went to the allergist, and the allergist did a bunch of tests, and they all came out negative. I kept saying mold, and he's like, "Oh, that couldn't do it to you." Um, yeah, the test came out negative. He told me it was just stress, and they were labeled idiopathic hives is what they call it. So, and I think that's just, what's in your head. But then, when I get out of mold, it did take a while for them to calm down. Just because anytime I would touch something that had been near the house, I would just completely break out again. And it just took a while of my. So if my husband went to the house and he came around me, he would have to like completely shower and put his clothes in the garage, and nothing that was in the house could even touch me, or else I would just, blow up.
Wow.
But yeah, and going back to that's why I decided to start sharing, because I was like, okay, you can see, the full story of what happened. So I feel like this is pretty good proof.
When we look at what happened to you too, so you're breaking out in hives. At this point when you're seeing the allergist, am I correct here? At this point that you have mold in your house,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Okay. So that you've got mold and that it's like off the charts, whatever, really bad. You're breaking out in hives in your house. You go to the allergist, they test you for, I don't know, what do they test you for? Just food allergies and
Just the regular allergy panel, like they test you for the stuff that's in your based off of where you live, like the trees in your
the
area,
pollen.
then like normal allergies like cats, dogs, I don't know, just the top things that people are normally allergic to.
Allergic.
Even though I did know that we had mold in our house, I was still coming to terms with it.
Okay.
You know, because it kind of is a slow thing where you're pretty certain that's what it is, but you can't really wrap your head around it at first. At least for me, it took me a
Well,
while.
especially when you go to a doctor and they're telling you, no, that's not it. And you're thinking, okay. But I think that's a really good part of your story to kind of look at is that you have mold in your house. It's confirmed with some sort of testing that you guys did. You know that there's mold there. You know that you're reacting in your house. You go to an allergist. They run the allergy test on you to rule out all of these common allergens. None of those are what your issue is. And so instead of them maybe thinking, okay, we know that there's mold in her house and we know that she's reacting to something, instead of even considering that as a possibility, the response is, nope, it's just random, or it's just you creating hives because
Yeah,
it's, I don't know. That's wild to me.
I remember being very highly offended with this guy. I felt like he was like almost thinking that it was funny that I would think that, or stupid or something. I felt very talked down to.
It's hard when you aren't as knowledgeable and you don't know and you're not certain, especially when you're still sick, you're vulnerable and you don't. That's again, like, I know I'm going back to that same point, but that is again why I can't let it go and I won't let it go is because I'm like, now I know better and I have my facts straight,
Mhm.
at least to the best of my ability, to where if somebody says something to me, I'm like, oh, nope, we're not going to let that slide. We're going to correct because people need to know that this is serious.
Right.
So,
That's a good point. I feel like while it was unfolding, I didn't have the vocabulary surrounding it to defend myself ever.
yeah.
So I kind of got walked on a lot because I knew what I knew, but I didn't know how to express it to somebody
And
else.
I think the game changer part of that is when you do actually start feeling better, it's so undeniable because in my case, I've had people suggest to me that this whole thing is in my head, like that I'm nuts and I've made this whole thing up. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I get tested. There's mycotoxins in my urine. I have my home tested. There's high levels of mold in my air, really horrible indoor air quality. This is from the standpoint of like an actual mold test and also just the particles floating in the air, which I know that particles aren't just mold, but it's contributing to that greater indoor air quality, like we talked about. So I have these like data points. Get the mold out of my house. Like we have that done. I move back in, a couple months goes by, and I start feeling better. And I don't know, like I don't think that I have the ability to do that much mental gymnastics with my own body. Like I just don't know that I can buy that theory. Especially with the things that were so weird, like rashes and ear pain, how could I even possibly be imagining that or making that happen? It's so bizarre to even think about that. And I did have treatments that I did post mold, but none of them are anything that's going to do anything. You know what I mean? Like it's more
Yeah.
supportive,
The biggest factor was the leaving the environment.
getting it out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course I'll never really know, like, would I have healed without those supportive things? But I really think that the things that I was taking was more truly just supportive, supporting my body's ability to recover and, you know, I guess like rid itself of the mold.
Well, I
is
can
really
tell
all it
you that
was.
I didn't start taking any binders or anything to even support my body until way after.
Yeah.
And my body mostly healed without all of that other stuff. It's the
Yeah.
mental stuff, not the mental stuff, but it was like more the brain fog that took um, supporting my body with, replacing minerals and stuff. So that took replacement and binding and stuff, but most of the healing was done 100% with just leaving my environment.
Yeah. Removing
So,
exposure, removing or at least significantly reducing exposure.
right.
So, yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But
So back to the story. So after that happened, with the big lawsuit, right? Insurance companies immediately responded because mold claims spiked rapidly, and insurers reported billions in losses tied to mold related claims. So that's what I was talking about. I am not sure how sustainable it would be for insurance companies to always be covering like millions and billions in lawsuits, but then it goes back to them covering it in the first place and not letting it get there. But then to me, it's like a whole systemic issue of we need to, it's not all going to be on the insurance companies. I think it starts at the beginning, how houses are built, and then going from there. So,
yeah.
but
What
anyway,
year
oh, sorry, go ahead.
what year was this taking place again?
So the lawsuit happened in 2001.
Okay.
And then insurance companies added mold exclusions. They introduced coverage caps of like 5,000, 10,000. Separated mold from standard water damage claims, and they tightened up definitions such as sudden versus gradual loss, gradual damage, maintenance versus covered loss. So a lot of changes happened at that time, and that's kind of now where we're at with insurance, where it feels and sometimes is impossible to get your insurance company on board. And so I wanted to talk to you about the one of the first times I was introduced to you, and what kind of like spiked my interest with your TikTok page is you shared with us your experience with insurance. And I don't know, only go into how much you're comfortable with sharing, but can you kind of share some of that experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, an important thing to note is that we did pay to have mold coverage as part of our homeowners insurance policy. So that was specifically something that was on our policy because a lot of people will kind of tell me like blanketly, mold's not covered. And they're not totally wrong, but they're also not totally right. So you do have to kind of like what you said, they introduce now all these hoops that you have to jump through. So we just happen to have that coverage. I can give my husband credit for that because he set that all up. And so when we kind of started going through this, we looked at our insurance policy, saw that we had some mold coverage, and tried to open a claim with them.
But
And
it was only like five or
yeah,
10,000, right?
so ours was a $10,000 cap on mold. Um, and we kind of went through the process of filing the claim and all of these. Oh man, it was a doozy. They really do not want to pay for mold. And maybe I'll be honest too. This is my first time. This was our first time ever filing a claim with our homeowners insurance that we had paid for years. And I'll just tell you right up, it straight up, it was AAA. So thanks AAA. AAA made our life a living hell for a while there. And they basically like it really came down to we had to fight them. We had to fight them for this coverage because they wanted to blame it on us, basically. When we finally found out where the mold was, where it was coming from, it was a leak. Um, so there's a little in your bathtub, you've got like that little circle thing that flips up, which is to stop the drain. And right underneath there, there's that gap. That's your overflow drain, so that if your kids fill your bathtub up or they forget to like turn off the water, it drains so that the tub doesn't overflow. And that drain is supposed to drain into the drain, and there was a leak through there. And so that caused water to build up under the tub. And the water then was kind of like leaking down into the crawl space and growing in the wood underneath the house in our crawl space. And all of our HVAC ductwork also runs through that crawl space um, underneath the house. So you're getting like your air that's being blown through the house is kind of in proximity to this mold that's growing. So that was kind of the situation. But they basically were like, well, you should have known that the mold was growing and you should have reported it. And we kind of asked them, well, how would we possibly know that mold is growing underneath a bathtub? And they're like, well, you need to check. And we would kind of turn it back on them. How would you suggest we look underneath our bathtub? It's not like you can just lift it up like it's a car where you pop the hood. And ultimately, your insurance documents, there's a lot of ways in which they're vague, and the insurance company tries to use that to their advantage. But what we found out is that you can use it to your advantage too. And so the biggest thing for us was ChatGPT with that, or whatever AI. There's a bunch of them now, right? So we used ChatGPT. We loaded our insurance documents. We loaded all of our test results. We loaded basically everything we had, like throw everything that you have, make sure, it knows what state you're in, what the laws are, and it can help you basically communicate with your insurance company to fight them if you believe that they should be covering it. And we were successful in that. We also had success arguing with them that the testing charges were investigative charges and should not be put under the $10,000 mold limit. And they did agree with us on that. And then there was some additional part of the claim that, the remediation cost went really for us. And I know that our remediation was small, but it was right in that $10,000 range without putting anything like back together because you're ripping things out. So we were also able to kind of argue with them that the putting things back together was not part of mold. That's reconstruction, and they put that under, I think it's called like coverage A. You might have to fact check.
Yeah,
But
I think it is coverage A. Yeah.
yeah, so we were successful kind of getting some like additional outside of the 10K just by really pushing and asking a lot of questions and all that. Yeah. So
And that's
um
what stuck out to me is because I did have a mold policy as well. So it covered 5,000 of it, but yeah, I didn't have any of the reconstruction covered. So
yeah,
that's
because 5,000 with a mold remediation is like a drop in the bucket, basically.
drop in the bucket. Yeah.
And they make you fight for that drop in the bucket.
They actually didn't make me fight for that. So I'm surprised that you got
Okay.
pushed back on that part mold
Horrible pushback.
because mold is mold. Like you don't know it's there. Otherwise, it wouldn't become mold. So I just don't understand how they could even push back on
Yeah.
that for you. So
Well, there were a lot of I mean, they tried to basically say that it was our fault that we hadn't addressed it sooner, but and when we originally found out that there was mold, it was my body. That was the first test we did. Then it was air quality samples, which our air was horrible, but that didn't tell us where it was actually coming from. So it
yeah,
took some time to figure that out. And during that process, they're like ripping holes in the walls in various spots. Like we had like some ideas, like, well, maybe it's like in the washing machine area, like maybe it's the laundry room. Okay, maybe it's the roof, because we had some roof leaks in prior years, and we had one in my bathroom that we kind of did everything that we thought we were supposed to do. So when they were trying to say that it was negligence because the roof leak, we're like, well, we we paid for a roofer to come out and fix that. We had them come out and we did all the things to fix that. So how is that negligence? We couldn't see up in there to know if we can't know if mold's growing somewhere that we have zero access to. Um but once
Yeah,
but then all of that was ruled out anyway. The source was actually the bathtub once we found it. So,
that's yeah, that's so crazy. It feels like they were just pushing back to push back
yeah.
because
They were horrible. Like, they were really awful. Like, the claims adjuster was awful. The manager of the claims adjuster was awful. I could not say enough horrible things about AAA. We're no longer with them. Because they were just, they told us that it's their job to deny claims. They actually told us that on the phone. I wish in hindsight that we would have recorded our conversations,
yeah.
which is legal in Arizona. I don't know that it's legal everywhere. So, of course, if you are in that situation, I would totally record your conversations if it's legal. So look it up and make sure. I don't want to like tell people to do something that's going to get them in trouble, but I wish we would have had a recording of some of the crazy things that they actually said to us, but we don't. So,
And my insurance company, yeah, like I said, they did not push back at all. They didn't really even ask a ton of questions. But that seems normal to me because mold is mold. And the way that it got to be mold is by not knowing that it's there or something. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
It just,
something happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
know it was there or else, yeah. So that's crazy.
Well, and I think, there's this expectation. You pay for your insurance, you think that when you need to use it, you're going to be able to use it and that it'll
Right.
help you, you know. So that
Right.
was an interesting wake up call for us. Um Yeah,
Yeah.
that was quite a situation.
Well, and we always talk about like fires, if it was a fire, because it goes back to the visible thing. If it was a fire, it would be covered and people
Yeah,
wouldn't be, second guessing you. I even think fires that are your fault some are mostly covered or,
like if you have like a
fairly.
kitchen accident or something, or
Yeah, like my husband's family had a fire and it was because one of the kids was playing with matches and that was covered. So,
yeah, yeah. In fact, actually, somebody in my family told me this story that someone in my family had a accidental situation where they left like a spoon or something out on the cooktop. I think it maybe was like an electric, or I don't know what it was, but it was like out near that, and their dog like jumped up to like lick. They were in a hurry, I think. I don't know the whole story, but I know that something happened where the burner got turned on and it caused that it was like a plastic spoon or something caught fire. And the main issue was the house didn't burn down, but the chemical of the plastic saturated their entire inside of their house. And it was like they could not breathe in there. And their insurance covered all of that. Like for them to get new stuff, for them to stay in like in a hotel or wherever they stayed while, yeah. So somebody relayed the story to
what?
me, and I remember the person I was talking to, I was like, "Well, did they fight them on that?" And he said, "No, they just paid for it." So, isn't that
That's so
interesting?
confusing because that even seems a little more debatable than mold to me, because it's like, maybe you can just air it out or something, you know?
Right, right.
And I'm not saying that their claim shouldn't have been rewarded, but it's like you can't say yes to that type of claim and say no to
Shut
mold. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So it's just this
well,
whole weird, confusing thing that mold has over it. I've never
yeah.
understood.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to they try to paint the picture of mold is a result of you being, negligent and not cleaning your home. And that's
Yeah.
again, I'm sure that there are situations where maybe that's the case, but probably not for a lot of us. So,
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what we're here to do with the podcast and our platforms, is try to um, just tackle those, misconceptions around mold and get it more mainstream so that people don't have to go through the same processes that we did.
yeah, just to make it a little bit easier
Yeah,
because it's not easy.
it's not.
Yeah. And to shorten the time for people to figure out how to handle things is hopefully that's what I hope happens
I hope so
for
too.
someone. Yeah.
And just to get more resources out there, normalize it. But I do also think that it doesn't just come down to insurance. I think it needs to be tackled. It needs a big overhaul, and I don't know how that happens or what the answer is, but families and homeowners and people going through this issue shouldn't be the one to take it on. Um,
Yes.
Even though we don't have the answer is not just, having the buck stop with the homeowners. So,
Yeah. And it's yeah, you're right. There's so many layers to this. There's how are we building the houses? What about like I know we're talking a lot today about homeowners and that's kind of the focus just today of what we're talking about, but there's a whole other issue when it comes to renters, right? And
yeah,
renters being put in situations where, they have so little control over their ability to get testing and get any type of help when they're stuck in a moldy environment. So it's just a lot of, and then there's the healthcare side of it. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
right.
So I'm sure at some point we'll have a whole episode or probably multiple episodes about renting and all of that.
Well, as it relates to mold, renter, like landlord policies specifically, usually have mold coverage.
Yep.
So I feel like they should be taking advantage of that and fixing it. But yeah, renting is a whole other
Beast.
topic that we
Yes,
could get
it
into.
is. It is. And I think we will.
Yeah,
So
we will.
we will. Yeah. There's a lot here.
Well, but we are to an hour, and I think this was great information. Thank you for sharing your insurance story, and hopefully this helps somebody out there.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's interesting. I guess together we will figure all this out. We're going to make something happen.
Yes, we are. All right.
All right.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you.
Baylie.
Okay, bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Sporecast. If something in this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you next time.